In his own country, he is a superstar like no other.
He was the guy that defeated all the odds.
When he ran, he set the track on fire.
He wasn't just running to run, he was running to win.
The stunning murder case against the Blade Runner.
He was charged Thursday with murdering his girlfriend.
Once the darling of the media, the track star and Olympic athlete.
It's a case that's riveted the world. The Blade Runner, the fastest man on no legs, charged with killing his girlfriend.
You referred to this incident or this occurrence as an accident. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Where you go, you see it. You miss it.
People are glued to this trial. This is the trial of the century.
Here you had this Olympic hero and this beautiful, graceful woman.
Hi, I'm Oscar State tonight.
They were the it couple. Everybody wanted to know, how did they get together? How long have they been dating for? Is this serious?
He said to me that, Uncle Mark, I loved her. And when he said it, he burst into tears.
South Africa is riveted with the Oscar Pistorius case in the same way that America was riveted with the O.J. Simpson case 20 years ago.
I think people were just in awe of him and couldn't believe that someone of a superhuman status could, commit such heinous crimes.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
Horrible! He's guilty of sin!
This isn't really a whodunit, it's really a why done it.
Did he have intent to harm Reva? If he did, it's a homicide case. He's guilty of murder.
Is it your defense that you fired at the perceived attacker?
No, that's not mine.
Then what is your defense?
One gunshot, maybe it was by accident. But 4 gunshots, quite honestly, seems to be intentional.
Oscar is not a cold-blooded murder.
You fired at Reva.
I did not fire at Reva.
The riveting drama in this courtroom has been building up for over 3 months. I'm Deborah Patter in Pretoria, South Africa. The nation of Nelson Mandela is familiar with heartache and heroes, but this is the tale of a very different kind of hero.
The first count against the accused, count 1, is one of murder.
The High Court is awash in controversial testimony and raw, unfiltered emotion.
I don't have to look at a picture, I was there.
It has been an Oscar Pistorius no one could imagine.
Before I knew it, I'd fired 4 shots at the door.
He chose not to have his testimony on camera while being grilled by prosecutor Harry Nell.
You killed a person, that's what you did, isn't it?
I made a mistake.
You killed Reva Steenkamp, that's what you did.
The legendary Blade Runner,
Oscar Pistorius is going to win it.
27 years old, example of courage to the world. Accused of the Valentine's Day murder in 2013 of his stunning girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp.
You know exactly. You fired at Reva.
The champion, defeated.
She wasn't breathing.
Sobbing like a child.
It was unbelievable. He was such a hero to so many people.
Mark Seal of Vanity Fair magazine, a 48 Hours consultant, has written about the trial of Oscar Pistorius that is captivating the world.
It has everything. Drama, 2 young, attractive people, the gun culture of South Africa, and of course, Oscar Pistorius, Olympic hero.
The trial has been all-consuming for everybody in South Africa.
Jen Sue, a South African talk show host and friend of Oscar and Reva's, believes Oscar's innocent.
It's difficult because I'm with friends and they strongly disagree with me. They think he's guilty of sin, and we have arguments over this.
Daily, the trial, the first ever televised court case here, spills out of the courtroom into the headlines and hearts of South Africa.
For some, always be Oscar Pistorius, the hero, but for others, he's Oscar Pistorius, the killer.
Oscar is not a cold-blooded murder.
Mike Azzi, a man who's like a second father to Oscar and whom he remains close to, is speaking out for the first time on American television.
He's got lots and lots of love behind him, and we just hope that he can remain strong.
What's dead certain is this: the Blade Runner is in the race of a lifetime.
The stakes couldn't be much higher in this case.
You're still under oath, Mr. Pistorius.
Oscar Pistorius' fate will be decided by 𝐶𝐨𝐿, both judge and jury under South African law. She must determine what really happened in the early hours of Valentine's Day. Oscar lay in bed next to Riva, 29 years old.
Hi, my name is Riva.
The model and reality TV star recently started dating.
I got a fright from a noise that I heard inside the toilet, so I perceived coming out to attack me.
So he grabs his gun, he rushes to the bathroom where he thinks the intruder is hiding, and he starts firing. There's no intruder in the bathroom. It's Riva in the bathroom. 4 shots, 3 of which hit Riva Steenkamp.
Accident or murder? Since his arrest, Oscar has stuck to his story.
I didn't have time to think. I discharged my firearm.
4 shots through this bathroom door, which now sits like some hideous monument in the courtroom, as a nation awaits Judgment Day for one of its greatest heroes.
The question is, why did he do it? The question is, what happened that night? The question is, what's the truth about Oscar Pistorius when he picked up that gun and started firing into a bathroom? That's the question. People said he went from the humble, friendly, lovable Oscar to Oscar the Invincible. I'm Oscar Pistorius. The world owes me.
Oscar's date tonight. He needed a date at the last minute, so it's like, Riva, just throw your stuff together and come and be my date.
Riva Steenkamp and Oscar Pistorius seemed like the kind of couple dreams are made of.
People saw them and thought, wow, they're both so attractive. They were like stars.
It was the story of a man who overcame incredible disability and then met an incredibly talented, beautiful woman, fell in love, and then tragedy struck.
The tragedy runs so deep because Oscar Pistorius ran against the wind from his birth in 1986. So fast, came so far, born without fibula bones.
When I was 11 months old, I had both my legs amputated, and then when I was 13, of walking legs.
His walking legs would soon take Oscar around the world. But the inspiration started with his mother, Sheila, who set the tone that allowed her child to become a champion. Years later, he shared the memory with Jay Leno.
Okay. My mother just said to me in the mornings, you know, Oscar, you put on your prosthetic legs. The last I want to hear about it. You know, there's no disability in our family.
His mother told him that the real loser is not the one who crosses the finish line last. The real loser is the one who sits on the side and doesn't try to compete.
She became ill and she passed on suddenly.
With his mother gone and estranged from his dad, 15-year-old Oscar turned to Mike Azzi as a father figure.
He's always been a wonderful boy.
To Oscar, he's Uncle Mike.
There's never a conversation that's ever ended without one of the parties saying, I love you.
Nearly 9,000 miles away from South Africa, here in Fort Smith, Arkansas, we found a man who knew Oscar Pistorius before he became an international icon.
He was around 14 years old and he was jumping over hurdles. I was like, why would you do that? And he was just, there's no, why not?
Francois van der Watt, back then living in South Africa, sensed the determined boy needed better than his battered legs.
He was wearing what we call exoskeletal prosthetics, which is pretty wooden prosthetics, and
pretty primitive.
They're very primitive.
Together, Francois and Oscar decided to give Oscar the legs to match his heart. the wings he needed to fly. They called them blades.
There's no science behind it. It was kind of a trial and error. So our first day, first time we tried the running legs.
Were you impressed with this young man?
Absolutely. He wanted to be fast. He wanted to be a runner.
Oscar Pistorius took off.
God had a plan when he gave me these legs. At the end of the day, I'm happy. I don't think I would be doing athletics if I was able-bodied. I don't see myself as disabled.
The Blade Runner was born. The world had never seen anything like it.
He became half man, half machine with the gait of a cat and was able to run on these blades and not only run, but to win.
Pistorius would win races around the world and became an iconic symbol to his country and to the disabled community everywhere.
He set the track on fire. It was the most amazing thing.
𝐸𝐸𝐲𝐿, who lost his hands in an electrical accident, was Oscar's teammate.
And so he was never a star in the team, but he was always just one of us. He's just one of the teammates.
London 2012.
Oscar Pistorius wins it for South Africa. South Africa
marked achievements like no other.
This was history.
That's it, yeah.
Oscar and 𝐸𝐸𝐲𝐿 competed in the Paralympics for the disabled and won gold.
All of us were hugging.
There was also a very different type of victory, a legal one.
This day is going to go down in history for the quality of disabled people.
The little boy with no legs won the right to compete in the Olympic Games against the best able-bodied athletes in the world.
When he's on that running track at the Olympics, that says it all. It says, I'm here, I've overcome these odds.
While he didn't win an Olympic medal, the world crowned Oscar Pistorius 100% champion.
And it's just such a blessing. This whole experience for me, I've learned a lot, and just being able to come out here and represent my country has been very, very humbling for me.
But in the swirl of international attention, staying humble was a challenge for Oscar Pistorius, superstar.
Well, congratulations on the Olympics. That's pretty amazing. How does it
Some said I would never walk. I said, bring it on.
Everywhere you look.
This is my track, they're just visitors.
There was Oscar, 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 Oscar.
Hi, my name is Riva, and I'm a contestant.
Beautiful and smart, model and aspiring actress Riva Steenkamp was part of the celebrity society Oscar had run his way.
And everybody just said, wow, you know, who is that? Who is that woman?
Modeling was now leading.
And we were in Jamaica this year.
To a reality TV show.
Off camera, people started to plot against each other.
Riva modeled from age 14, but she would also study law. Ambitious, compassionate, politically aware.
It was ironic that she died at the hand of a man with a gun because she and her mother were longtime advocates of women suffering violence and domestic abuse.
Just 4 days before she was shot dead, Riva was tweeting, "Speak out against rape in South Africa. #rape, crime, say no."
She wanted to become one of the activists for women empowerment.
Riva's publicist, 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸
they're able to face challenges like abuse, domestic violence.
She is the most amazing human being.
Gina Myers and Riva became roommates and best friends.
Everything about her, her belief system, the integrity she had.
She was a rising star of tremendous magnitude.
Just like Oscar Pistorius.
Oscar's a very, very sexy boy.
It wouldn't take long for the two supernovas to find each other.
He doesn't do it in like an arrogant, obnoxious way. He's a gentleman.
He was definitely in love.
But where some saw a magical couple, others saw an Oscar Pistorius changed by fame.
People said he went from the humble, friendly, lovable Oscar to Oscar the invincible, like I'm Oscar Pistorius. The world owes me.
He was always still the same Oscar that I knew him the first time I met him.
Except for one crucial thing. Oscar was now afraid. Not of the competition on the track, but of the crime celebrity can attract.
And when I visited him and stayed at his house, he turns on the alarm system and he tells me, I'm sleeping with my 9mm next to my bed.
With his gun?
With his gun, yes.
2 weeks before Oscar Pistorius shot Riva Steenkamp to death, the glittering couple had dinner with their good friend Jen Sue.
We had a great, great night. Oscar was just different with Riva. Riva was for keeps.
I heard a lady screaming. It was blood-curdling. It was something that leaves you cold.
You shot 4 shots through the door.
I did not fire at Riva.
You armed yourself, you're ready to shoot.
Well, lady, I believed that there was a threat that was on my life.
Pistorius is running on a track he's never run on before.
You shot 4 shots through the door, knowing that you're standing behind the door. You killed Riva, and you're the only person that can give us a version of what happened.
And now he's the defendant in a case where he can go away for the rest of his life.
I'm putting it to you, Mr. Pistorius, that your version is not only untruthful, but it's so improbable that it cannot be reasonably possibly true.
Oscar Pistorius faces his toughest opponent yet, the unrelenting prosecuting attorney Harry Nell.
You are lying.
He is now in Nell's courtroom.
Defense attorney and CNN legal analyst Mark O'Mara successfully defended George Zimmerman,
not guilty,
for the fatal shooting of Trayvon Martin.
It's all about Mr. Pistorius.
He's a bulldog.
You're not unsure, you know for a fact.
That's his nickname, and he's earned it well throughout many, many, many trials.
Unlike the American jury system, all arguments and responses in the South African court are directed to one person.
Everyone who speaks in a courtroom to speak to the judge. So you'll hear them say, "Milady."
But milady, I'm not arguing.
That's correct, milady.
The milady is Judge 𝐶𝐨𝐿 Masipa. A child of apartheid, Judge Masipa became a social worker, then a crime reporter, a lawyer, and is now a judge in the High Court.
She is known to be a difficult sentencer.
You possibly think this is entertainment. Not.
I love how she sits and listens quietly.
Ferial Haffajee is editor of Johannesburg's City Press newspaper.
You get the sense that she's going to completely apply her mind when she eventually does right. What's probably going to be the judgment of her life.
I fired at the door, my lady.
No, but listen to my question, Mr. Pistorius.
That judgment will depend in part on Nell's ability to show that Pistorius' story about shooting at a would-be intruder is a lie.
You fired at Riva. These other versions of yours cannot work.
As Riva's family watched closely, Nell set out to prove that Oscar and Riva were actually having a heated argument that night. Nell opened his case with Oscar's neighbors, who testified to what they heard.
My lady, I woke up around 1:56 in the morning. It seemed like somebody was involved in a fight.
The lady, the screams that I heard was petrified, the female screams. But just before the shots, it was blood-curdling. It was something that leaves you cold.
Those witnesses were talking about death screams. If they are to be believed, then it's murder. Period.
You come from a family with lots of guns, am I right?
That's correct.
50 or more, I read somewhere.
Prosecutor Nell established what he called Oscar's preoccupation with and reckless use of guns. He played this video in court of Oscar shooting a watermelon. Pistorius' friend testified to an incident when Oscar accidentally fired a gun in a crowded restaurant.
I do remember Oscar saying, "Please," to Darren, just say it was you. I don't want any tension around me. Just say it was you.
Pistorius denies shifting the blame. Then Pistorius' ex-girlfriend described another incident with a gun in Oscar's car after they were pulled over by police.
Oscar got very angry about after I saw Oscar take his gun and shoot out of the car roof.
Pistorius denied that too.
Shooting a gun is a very empowering activity. It's also a very potent way of explosively solving a problem.
Forensic psychiatrist Dr. Alexander Sasha-Bardet.
That also shows a propensity to reach for a gun when he's not feeling that he's getting his way.
After 12 days and 15 witnesses for the prosecution, the most important piece of evidence would be this bathroom door, a silent witness showing the placement of the 4 bullets fired from Oscar's gun. The prosecution contends that during her argument with Oscar, Riva ran into the bathroom and locked the door. Oscar, in a rage, grabbed his pistol from under the bed, followed her without his prosthetic legs to the bathroom and fired into the door.
My lady, she was standing in front of the door, facing the door.
Prosecution ballistics expert Captain Chris Mangena demonstrated his theory about how each bullet struck Riva.
Bullet penetrated and broke the hip bone of the deceased.
He says the first hit her in the hip, knocking her backward.
From that position, she fell down.
Oscar then paused before firing a second shot which missed, ricocheting off the wall, injuring Riva in the back as she fell into a defensive position.
And she was a bit facing down.
A third and fourth shot followed, hitting her in the arm and head.
It comes in here.
How critical was the ballistics evidence?
It's absolutely vital to the prosecution case.
Dr. David 𝐇𝐨𝐥𝐿 specializes in forensic science.
Now, it's absolutely crucial to show not only that that was the sequence, but that there was a delay in the shooting.
Why is that delay important?
Because it then can be argued that Riva, after the first shot in the hip, cried out, thus dispelling any notion that Oscar would have had of it being an intruder.
A cry which would be consistent with what Oscar's neighbors said they heard.
You fired at Riva. These other versions of yours cannot work.
True,
you fired at her. You did.
I did not fire at Riva.
When prosecutor Nell cross-examined Pistorius, he showed little concern for the defendants weeping and vomiting on the stand.
Take responsibility for what you've done, Mr. Pistorius.
My lady, I've taken responsibility, but I will not look at a picture where I'm tormented by what I saw and felt that night. I remember. I don't have to look at a picture. I was there.
It's the same thing as the watermelon. The same happened to Riva's head. It exploded.
During those days of intense questioning, a claim of self-defense evolved into a story of an accidental shooting.
Did you fire deliberately?
No, my lady, I did not fire deliberately.
You stole it accidentally?
I didn't mean to pull the trigger, so in that sense it was an accident.
Okay. An accident could explain one gunshot, but 4 gunshots, quite honestly, seems to be intentional when you can put them all at the same level and all into the same door.
He's denied things that are undeniable, which has damaged his credibility.
Do you remember firing at the door?
Yes, I remember firing at the door.
Why did you? Yesterday when we ended, you said you don't. You can't remember.
One of the last witnesses for the prosecution, Riva Steenkamp.
You have picked on me incessantly.
Her words from text messages to Oscar, read by a police detective, sent just weeks before she was killed.
I'm the girl who fell in love with you.
Those text messages were very haunting to me.
You do everything to throw tantrums in front of people. I'm scared of you sometimes and how you snap at me.
The Riva that we hadn't seen until then was the terrified, insecure, not in a happy relationship Riva.
I can't be attacked by outsiders for dating you and be attacked by you, the one person I deserve protection from.
What was the prosecutor's best evidence in his case for murder? Chat now with Deborah Pata on Twitter and Peter Van Sant on Facebook.
You killed her. You shot and killed her. Take responsibility for what you've done, Mr. Pistorius.
I've taken responsibility, but I will not look at a picture where I'm tormented by what I saw and felt that night. As I picked her up, my fingers touched her head. I remember. I was there.
What happened was a tragedy. No one will ever know what was the cause of it or how it happened. And he feels the family's pain. He genuinely feels pain for her family.
I would like to take this opportunity to apologise to Reva's family.
But with all the people glaring at him in the courtroom and everyone wanting the worst for him, society is a cruel place.
It's going to go down as one of the most expensive defences in criminal law history in South Africa.
Attorney Renier Spies says Oscar's dream team defence lawyer Barry Rue is a seasoned litigator.
There's no way that even standing on the balcony that you would have been able to hear screams.
Barry Rue is regarded as one of the best.
Do you have a difficulty in sleeping?
I do, my lady. I wake up and I smell blood.
The defence says there is no evidence the couple argued that night, denying the prosecution's claims that Oscar murdered Reva Steenkamp in a fit of rage.
Was the crying soft, loud?
The crying was like,
And I heard her petrified screaming sometime during the gunshots and just after the gunshots.
Neighbours testified they heard crying and screaming. They reenacted what they heard, but was it Reva?
That fact was so devastating to the defense until Oscar Pistorius testified.
Attorney Joe Takapina, who has represented many high-profile clients, like New York Yankee Alex Rodriguez, believes the sound of Oscar's voice in court helps to raise reasonable doubt.
You fired at Reva.
I did not fire at Reva.
When he testified in heightened tones, in excitable tones, you heard what appeared to be a feminine voice.
What did you shout?
I screamed, I said, "Get the out of my house. Get the out of my house."
And it was clear that someone could easily take that for a woman's high-pitched screams. So all of a sudden, that testimony, which seemed damning to Pistorius, has been minimized substantially.
Prosecutors have more problems. Lead detective Hilton Buerta was booted from the case after he was slapped with attempted murder charges in an unrelated incident. And his team botched the crime scene and mishandled the bullet-riddled.
When the most important piece of forensic evidence in this case is detached, is taken away, is trampled on, it leaves room for the defense to punch a hole through the evidence in this case.
Defending Oscar Pistorius has not been easy. Attorney Barry Rue has had to strike a delicate balance between emotion and reasonable doubt. With no jury, Pistorius can only hope that the woman whose opinion matters the most, Judge Masipa, will believe his story.
We sat at the dining room table for a while and we chatted about my day.
According to Oscar, he and Reva went to bed between 9 and 10 p.m. He says he woke up in the early hours of Valentine's Day to bring in a fan from his terrace.
Because at this point that I heard a window open in the bathroom.
The time, Mr. Pistorius?
My lady, that's the moment that everything changed. I thought that there was a burglar that was gaining entry into my home.
Oscar says he grabbed a gun he keeps under his bed. It was dark and, remember, he wasn't wearing his prosthetic legs. Armed and walking on his stumps, Oscar says he made his way to the bathroom and shouted to Reva to call the police.
And then I heard a noise from inside the toilet. Before I knew it, I'd fired 4 shots at the door. My ears were ringing, I couldn't hear anything.
After firing 4 shots, he put on his prosthetic legs.
I was crying out for the Lord to help me. I was crying out for Reva. I was screaming.
He kicked the door and hit it with his cricket bat. Then, Oscar says, he opened the door and discovered Reva.
And I sat over Reva and I cried. And I don't know how long I was there for. She wasn't breathing.
Oscar's family sharing his pain.
At first glance, Oscar Pistorius' story sounds ridiculous, but you have to step back and realize there's context that we need to put into the Oscar Pistorius story and his version of events.
Have you ever been a victim to crime?
Been broken into in 2005. I've been followed home late at night.
Oscar has always been fearful of that. He was always looking over his shoulder. My son lived at his house one night and went to the kitchen, and Oscar came running out with the gun in his hand. And my son said, "It's me, Oz." And then Oscar said, "Okay." He said, "Boy, you must be careful because I sleep with a gun under my."
Perhaps the way to understand Oscar's defense is to understand South Africa.
Almost everybody in South Africa has got a war story to tell you.
It is a country with one of the highest rates of violent crime in the world. Newspaper editor Ferial Haffajee.
It's hard, I think, for Americans to comprehend the levels of crime. Oscar lived in fear, he had high security. Help us understand why so much fear.
If I leave work late, the drive home, I look a bit like I'm in a movie. It's dark, you make sure your doors are locked, you don't stop at a red light, you go through it. On the way home, I see signs saying hijacking hotspot. It's part of how we live, it's part of how South Africans live.
Oscar's fear for his safety would become the dramatic turning point. A defense expert would testify about Oscar's state of mind and reveal a stunning diagnosis.
Mr. Pistorius has a long history of generalized anxiety disorder that appears to have been increasing with time.
Generalized anxiety disorder is a recognized diagnosis. It doesn't cross the line in terms of impacting on your ability to distinguish reality from fantasy. It's a diagnosis that makes you worry a lot.
After more than 30 days of testimony, the judge would suspend the trial and order Oscar Pistorius to undergo a psychiatric evaluation.
This anxiety thing could certainly help his case. And if that condition existed at the time of the incident, you cannot judge me by the same measure you would judge the reasonable man under those circumstances.
4 mental health experts are now almost through examining Oscar and will give their medical evaluation.
If Oscar Pistorius has an anxiety disorder, he will walk. He will be found not guilty, not liable, but the odds of that happening are slim to none.
"20 years ago tomorrow, the fate of another sports star accused of murder riveted this country, O.J. Simpson.
When the Oscar Pistorius story broke,
I thought, uh-oh, maybe we're having a repeat here.
So what we have here is a suicidal man, O.J. Simpson, with a gun to his head.
20 years ago tomorrow, the fate of another sports star accused of murder riveted this country, O.J. Simpson. After learning police were going to arrest him for the murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman, O.J. fled in the back of that white Bronco down a California freeway.
You have crowds forming, and they're going crazy, screaming encouragement to the Bronco. The networks all across the country are interrupting to air the footage, and people were just glued to their TV screens.
Vanity Fair writer Lily Analik.
And he's an American hero, Heisman Trophy winner, Football Hall of Famer, movie star. Go, OJ, go! And this guy is in the middle of a free fall. And the whole country is watching to see if he's going to go splat.
If you are listening to this, O.J., there's a lot of people that look up to you.
As far as drama goes, you kind of can't beat it.
95 million people watched that Bronco chase. Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz was one of them.
I was watching the NBA playoffs and was furious that they switched away to watch this stupid chase.
This is insane.
Later, Dershowitz would join O.J. Simpson's defense team, but on June 17th, 1994, he was just irritated.
I couldn't believe that America was so transfixed with this event on television, but they were.
A similar phenomena is going on now in South Africa. There's a 24-hour channel devoted to the Pistorius trial.
In-depth analysis of the Oscar Pistorius trial.
Viewers can't get enough. They call it the Oscar effect. When the trial is on, worker productivity goes down. Barry Rue and Harry Nell have become household names.
Listen to the questions and give us the truth.
As famous as the legendary Dream Team that represented O.J. Simpson here in America.
I can't comment on that. It wasn't a dream team. They didn't get along. There was too much ego involved. It was anything but a dream team.
In spite of their differences, the strategy was clear.
What they've done to our client is wrong. We didn't win this case. The police and the prosecutors lost it. We helped them lose it.
They were ably assisted by the Los Angeles Police Department detectives investigating the case.
Devils of deception.
In particular, Mark Furman.
Mark Furman was a classic racist.
And prosecutor Marcia Clark knew it, Dershowitz says, long before she called Furman to the stand.
They knowingly walked into this trap, and we pulled the lever.
You say on your oath that you have not addressed any black person as a nigger.
That's what I'm saying, sir.
He's a lying, perjuring, genocidal racist.
In South Africa, the Pistorius defense team has tried to make an issue out of the alleged misdeeds of former lead detective Hilton Botha. And while Pistorius himself seemed shy around the camera, O.J. Simpson appeared to enjoy the spotlight. His star turn came when ADA Chris Darden made the mistake of asking him to try on the bloody glove.
I was 4 feet away when Darden pulled off the greatest blunder of any lawyer in the 20th century. He could have had the glove tried on outside the presence of the jury first to see if it fit, but he didn't. He was so arrogant, he had him try it on in front of the jury. He walked up to the jury and he basically said, "It's too small." And that became, of course, the mantra of the case.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
But to the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, the evidence was overwhelming.
I trusted the system. I was raised to believe that the halls of justice provided you with just that.
Ron Goldman's sister Kim has written an ebook, Can't Forgive.
I feel like my anger is appropriate.
We, the jury, and
It's hard to forget her face when the verdict was read.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
I was shocked.
Section 187.
I felt betrayed. I felt disappointed, anger.
150 million people watched her fall apart on national television. Outside the courtroom, a crowd erupted in cheers.
I didn't understand that. In my brains, he committed a homicide. People wanted to, hang out with him. I think people were just in awe of him and couldn't believe that someone of a superhuman status could, commit such heinous crimes.
When the Oscar Pistorius story broke, what were you thinking?
I thought, uh-oh, maybe we're having a repeat here.
Now, instead of talking about the juice, they're talking about the Blade Runner. But unlike the O.J. trial, there's jury to impress with courtroom theatrics in South Africa.
Do you envision a scenario where Oscar Pistorius will go home?
I think it's highly unlikely.
Former Dream Team lawyer Robert Shapiro has made guest appearances on South African television.
I think the most likely outcome for this case is a conviction. When Oscar Pistorius took the witness stand, he was confronted with inconsistent statements.
But while others talk about the Pistorius trial in relation to Simpson's, Shapiro won't. Alan Dershowitz, who has just written his autobiography, says that being one of the attorneys who defended O.J. hurt his law practice. The verdict divided the nation, often along racial lines.
The good thing coming out of the O.J. Simpson trial was that it began a national conversation.
I think it started a national shouting match. I don't think it was a conversation. Everybody either knew he did it.
It's horrible. He's guilty of sin.
Or knew he didn't do it.
And O.J. Simpson, for his part, did nothing to quiet the noise. Months after the trial ended, he spoke with the late 48 Hours correspondent, Harold Dow.
A lot of people are having a hard time accepting the verdict. What do you say to them?
People of color have been, in a sense, victimized for years with the legal system. We were always told that that's the way it is. If you don't like it, go back to Africa. I say to them, that's the way it is. If you don't like it, go back to Europe or go back to wherever,
And while on the surface it may not seem that there's a race card in the Pistorius case, Dershowitz says there is a big one being played.
His essential defense is everybody in South Africa knows that white people like Pistorius are afraid of black people breaking into their house at night. And therefore, what he did was perfectly rational to a white person in South Africa. The problem is, the judge is black. You can't make that argument openly. You can only hint at it and let people absorb that.
As for O.J. Simpson, a civil court jury did find him responsible for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman and awarded monetary damages. But Simpson never paid what he owed. His freedom would be short-lived.
Conspiracy to commit robbery, guilty.
In 2008, he was sentenced to 33 years in prison after breaking into a Las Vegas hotel room, he says, for his sports memorabilia. Still, it's not nearly enough for Ron Goldman's sister.
What advice, if any, would you give to Reva Steve Kemp's family?
Stay vigilant, stay active, stay present as much as you can. Keep her presence known in that courtroom. She deserves that.
The drama in this courtroom begins again in 2 weeks. What the doctors and Judge Masipa decide will determine where Oscar Pistorius spends the rest of his life.
If Oscar comes back and they find that he's only slightly crazy, the question would be, is he so crazy that he cannot assist in his own defense? And certainly from what we've seen, that is not the case.
Attorney Renier Spies also points out the psychiatric evaluation of Pistorius will attempt to determine his mental state that Valentine's morning he shot Reva.
The second question then would be, is he crazy to the extent we had diminished capacity?
In either case, the trial is likely to continue, calling final witnesses and both sides presenting Judge Masipa with closing arguments before her final deliberation begins. Now, Oscar Pistorius has nowhere to run.
Oz has been a fighter, so he's going to get through this.
It was a journey only Oscar could imagine, now totally eclipsed by the size of his fall.
The Oscar Pistorius that was a hero is gone forever.
Well, both of them were really on the road to gold. And now everything has been taken away.
Ironically, Reva was becoming active in speaking out about violence against women. Be brave, see the positive, make your voice heard. Reva's own words from a speech she was to give at a girls' school that Valentine's morning she died.
I think the way that you go out is so important. You either made an impact in a positive way or a negative way. But just maintain integrity and maintain class and just always be true to yourself. And I'm going to miss you all so much. And I love you very, very
much. Do you think Oscar Pistorius will be found guilty of premeditated murder? Chat now with Deborah Patta on Twitter and Peter Van Sant on Facebook.
The family was not the family that they appeared to be.
Jeff told me his mother was storing knives in her headboard.
Nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors.
My sweet girl. When he saw me walk in, it was, not here, Gail.
You got some guts.
He's the devil.